Michelle, good morning. Good morning, Wakanda Nation. I see we have people from all over the place. Thank you, Bill, for coming in to help us today. And today we're going to have some fun. We're going to build an application with Wakanda. We're going to start from scratch, so cross your fingers. Hope everything goes well. If not, if the application does not get built in 30 minutes, I'll have my resume online, and anybody who needs a web developer, I'll be available. I just wanted to say we are broadcasting here live from the 9th floor of the beautiful Wakanda Towers here in San Jose. So anyway, let's get started. I've done a little search here online for Web 2.0 to-do lists, and these are all nice little multi-user to-do list, and I signed up for one here called Remember the Milk, and you can see it's very simple. You can enter your items and prioritize them. You can see your completed items, go back and forth, very simple. So we're going to go build one of those in Wakanda today. So let's jump into Wakanda Studio. First of all, for those of you who are new, when you download Wakanda, you get the Wakanda Studio and also Wakanda Server. Wakanda is a complete solution. You can build your web and mobile applications with Wakanda. You don't need to have put together a lot of different pieces. And the nice thing is, it's all JavaScript. So let's fire up our studio. And this is the place where you manage your projects, and we're going to create a new project today. They have templates that come with Wakanda to help you get started. So today we'll just use the blank template and create our solution. I'll just store it here in the desktop. We'll call our project the Wakanda List. That was Michelle's great idea yesterday for the name. Okay, so Wakanda Studio just created our project, and inside we have our base model. We have the web folder, which will be our client, including our HTML, and as we build the application in the studio, it will build our CSS files and our JavaScript files, and it has a directory. So since this is going to be a multi-user application, first thing, let's go into the directory and add some users. Wakanda has automatic support for session management and for securing your applications, and we will be showing you that today. So I'll be the first one in, and I'll add my compadre, Bill McKay. Around the office, he is known as Billy the Kid. And of course, last but not least, our fearless leader, Michelle Guerin. Okay, so now we need to add some passwords. We want a secure application, and I definitely don't want Michelle to be able to read my to-do list. So we're going to add passwords. Okay, so we have our users for today's application. We'll be coming back to the Wakanda directory later, but next, of course, we have to build our model. And Wakanda has a beautiful visual model editor. We're going to add our base class and start to add our attributes. So, of course, we need a title and priority, which will be a long integer. We'll add a complete flag so we can mark our items that are completed. I'm going to add a create date and a complete date. And we're going to store the user ID so we can keep everybody's entity separate. Now, we are going to set this base class to public on server and extend this class. And this extended class will be public, and this will be the interface from the browser. And what we will do on this extended class is put a restricting query where we always filter the records by user ID. And user ID, there's a system variable that we can access. This will make it so that from the client, even if you ask for all the entities from the to-do list, you would only see the entities of the currently signed in user. So that's our security part. So we need to do a little housekeeping. Now we are working here on Wakanda server-side code. We are going to initialize our new to-do list items, and you will see that we are writing JavaScript here. So for all you PHP, Ruby, Python developers, you write your JavaScript server-side and client-side. That saves you a little bit of trouble. So here we will initialize our current user ID. There's a Wakanda function called current user that will give us the ID of the currently signed in user. We'll initialize priority to 2, and my keyboard is, there we go. Let's set our create date, and we'll use the JavaScript date constructor. And finally, we'll set complete to false to initialize our record. Okay, so that's a little server-side code. We are going to come back here later and write some more, but for now I'll close that. So now we have our directory set up, we have our model, and let's go into the GUI builder and start to build our application. So earlier today, as Billy was setting up for today's webinar, he was downloading some music from his favorite website, Spotify. And I took a look at that and I said, you know what, Billy? Let's make our to-do list look like this. I like this interface, nice and simple and clean. And one thing I love is that it just stays, the container just stays right in the middle. So first thing is, let's see if we can build our to-do list to look something like that. So now we're in the GUI builder, and you can see we have our page here, and we have access to all our widgets. And the beautiful thing about Wakanda, we actually have access to our data model in our GUI builder. And we can bind our widgets to our model, and it's beautiful. So let's go build our application. I'm going to drag out a container, and we're going to see how Wakanda will build your style sheets for you. So I don't have to be a CSS expert. So let's pick a background color, and let's go with that green like they did in Spotify. I noticed the Spotify application did not have a border on the container, and it had a little more of a rounding. So right now I don't have to know all this CSS commands to do all this. And we don't want to drop shadow. So if we compare here, we're starting to look pretty good. So let's copy this and create our main container for our application. And this has a background color, probably light gray like that. Okay, let's fire this up, see what we have so far. So now we're, the studio will send our application over to Wakanda server and launch our browser for us. And you can see we're looking pretty good. But one thing is, our containers are not staying centered like Spotify. So I need to change that behavior. Well, you cannot do that. You cannot get that behavior with the property dialog for the container. But Wakanda is very flexible. So it allows you to override the default behavior. And right here you can see, as we were working in the studio, Wakanda was building our style sheet. But we can actually add a new custom style sheet to add our custom behavior that we want. So I'm going to call this custom, and I'm going to add a style for the two containers. Their IDs are container 1 and container 2. So what we need is we need to add a margin property with 0 pixel auto, and we have to force the width And I'll just pick 860. Should be about good. I'll copy this. Container 2. Okay, so we've saved that style sheet. And now we need to add that style sheet to our application. So right here you can see Wakanda will let you add a new style sheet. And I can go find that. Here we go, and there's my custom style sheet. And there it is. Now we need to save our page here, and I want to make sure everything's great. So let's save that. And I had to force a save there. So you can see the studio was building its style sheet as we worked in the editors there. And then we added our own custom style sheet to augment that behavior. And I think we're good. So before we go look at our page, I'm going to add our title here. And let's go style that up a bit. That's not big enough. And I think white will look very good on that background. Okay, let's save it. So we're going to go reload. And we still don't have our behavior that we want. So our style sheet is not properly loaded. Once in a while you get a little bit of problem with that. Styles, custom, application, index, that all looks good. So I'm sure that will start to work in a minute. Oh, you know what? I forgot something. See, Wakanda's great, but the developer still has to do proper. We need to constrain this here. And add this. This should fix it. Okay, do a save. Same for here. And let's save that. Let's see what we have now. So we have the middle working right, but this guy is not behaving. So we will go see what the problem is. So I said we're building something live today. So this is the, we didn't have our constraint here on the right. There we go. Let's see how that goes. This is exactly what you'd be doing. There we go. In a real application, but here we go. We got our behavior. It's staying centered in the middle. It looks great. And Billy's happy. Okay, cool. Well, let's go build some more. So the next thing is I'm going to use a tab widget for this application, and I'm going to put my to-do list in one tab and my completed items in the other tab. And we'll kind of make it really easy to work with tabs. And I'm going to add the other tab here. This will be called complete, and this side to do. So we have that. Another thing I want to add here is a display error. This is just a nice object where we can return messages from our server, which we'll be doing later, but I'll just add it now, put it into place. Red is a nice color for error messages. Let's just give this a width of 600. You can see as we edit in the property dialog, our widgets are getting their proper styling, so it's very easy. Now, the next thing we're going to look at, to display our to-do list items, I'm going to use the matrix widget, which is a unique widget. I've never had anything like this in my client-side JavaScript library, so love this one. So we put it out here, and now we are going to bind our data to our application that will be loaded into the client, and it's just as easy as dropping it here, and it will ask you what fields do you want to show here, and I'm just going to do title and priority and complete. So there we go. It creates it and it drops it into the matrix. Now I want to style this a little bit to be more of a row kind of situation, and let's go in here, put the width here maybe 400. Actually, let's maybe do about 350. That would be better. Okay, priority, that's too big. maybe 35 will be good for that. Let's move it over here and complete. In fact, we need to, that's a little too big. Maybe 310. Move that over. Get room for our complete. Good enough. Okay. So now we'll resize this container. And that's basically the look we'll have for our to-do list items. We need to add some buttons. And we're very close to having a little piece of our application finished. Now I'll just drag this data source onto the button, and that button will automatically be bound to our data source and also tied to our matrix. I'm going to give it a create action. That's how we can click that button to create a new to-do list item. And we need another button to save it. Now this button, I want to have some custom behavior, so I will not bind it to the data source directly, but I will go in here and in my, I have event handlers, and right in here I can write some custom code. So now we are writing code on for the client-side application, and it's still going to be in JavaScript. So WAF points to the Wakanda Framework global object, and it gives us a lot of power. And right here, there's a little housekeeping I want to do. I want to set my complete date before I save the record. And I'm going to set that to whatever today's date is, and I'm going to use the same JavaScript date constructor that I used on the server side. So for you Ruby and PHP guys, you don't have to remember two languages, and that should save you a little headaches. So now we're going to do our save of our to-do list. So we use the save method, and I want to have a little custom behavior here, so I'm going to pass an object, it's called an options object, to the save command. And I'll have an onSuccess handler, which will be a function, and if the to-do list item is successfully saved on the server, I will get a callback to this function. Now later on we'll write an error handler also, but for now I'm not going to worry about that. Now basically what I want to do is if my to-do list item was saved, I want to requery my to-do list. And the reason is, if it was saved and the checkbox for completed was checked, I don't want to show it in my matrix anymore. So I can make that happen by doing a query on my list. Okay, so now I just have to query here, and basically the query I want is complete is false. I only want the things not completed to show up in my list. And I also want to order by priority. Okay, so let's save that. Let's go to our application and check how we're doing so far. There we go. Oh, and I did not put my login widget yet. So to sign in, Wakanda has a nice little widget called the login widget. I don't have to create all this behavior myself. Let's style this, background color, let's match it up. And let's take off our border. And save. So anyway, this is what you'll be doing in your Wakanda Studio when you download Wakanda after this webinar. There we go. Our application's starting to look better. We have our tabs. Let's log in and test out how we have so far. I'm going to sign in, and you can see the login widget, nice and complete, shows that I'm signed in. I now have a session. Let's see if our create button's working. Oh, beautiful. There we go. We're getting close. I tell you what, my job's on the line here, people. Let's send out my resume. Okay, we're going to hit the save button. This is my career right now. Oh, problem. Okay. Now, we're going to do a little, this should have saved on the server. Now, we can go find out what happened. If we go back here to the studio, we can fire up a server-side test. And we can write code directly against the server. So let's go debug what happened here. My collection equals, so now we're back on the server. Base to do list dot all. And let's see if we have anything created here. So the server will just give us back, and look, I don't think we have anything created. So let's go see what happened. So we're going to go here to our save button. And first thing, let's go back and check our model, our to-do list, initialization. Let's see if we did everything correctly here. We set our current user, ID, our priority, create date, and complete. So that all looks good. So now let's go check the client. And we want to check the script on this button. Okay, waf.sources.todolist.save on success, function event, complete date. Oh, here it is. Here's the problem. So this is very nice, because if we just ran through this whole thing perfectly, you wouldn't get to see how you debug. Okay, let's go try it again. Create. I'm going to need it after this. Oh, my job is, I think I just bought myself another 2 weeks. So anyway, we got it saved. Let's create another one. Call my mom, save. If we change the priority, you can see that call my mom moves to the top. And if we save it and make it complete, it's no longer in our list. So we are cooking with gas. Okay, now we need to do some more. First of all, we completed that item, but we have nowhere to show it on the other side. So let's go build the other side. Now to build the other side, I'm going to use a grid, because I don't need quite as beautiful interface for completed items. So I'll make this read-only. Now, we have a data source pointing back to our to-do list, and I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm going to change the name to completed list. Now, both of these data sources point to the same data store on the server, but I'm going to do different queries against each one of them. So against this data source, I'm going to do a query that will show me only completed items. And I don't need this attribute, because we know it's complete if it's on this side. So now, what we need to do is write an event handler for our, whenever we click this completed tab, I will now do a query against this completed list data source. And of course, I only want to show complete is true. Okay, well, since we're in here, let's just finish up a little more code. When I click the to-do tab to go back to the to-do list, I want to do my query to show the items that are not complete. And we'll finish up a little more functionality. Let's write a few more handlers. When I first load, I just want to do a query on both of my data sources. And basically, if you're not signed in and you query the data source asking for your to-do list, the restricting query on the server will basically just send you back an entity collection that is empty. Now, there's other ways to do this, but for today's demonstration, we're just going to do it the fast way. So anyway, when we log in, let's load our data sources. And also, when we log out, let's just do the same thing. Basically, the restricting query on the server is going to be taking care of sending us the right entities. Okay, so let's go back to our application. And let's see what we have. There is my get some beer, and you can see on the complete side, call my mom. And when I log out, they both are empty. So let's log in as Billy the Kid. And you can see Billy logged in, but he cannot see anything. He cannot see my items. He'll create a new item. Let me see, what would Billy be doing? Buy some chips and salsa. Probably has a little party this weekend. Save that. Get some beer. Call up some girls. Okay. He is ready, and maybe he goes and completes that one. And he gets the beer. He's ready for the party. There he goes. He can see he's got that done. He still has to call up a few girls. We will save that for later. And let's log in as our fearless leader, Michelle Guerin. Okay, Michelle. Call France at 5 a.m. Michelle is on the clock 24 hours a day working to promote Wakanda. And that's great. So far, what's the time, guys? How far? We're 9:30?
Yeah, we're doing fine.
Okay, we're doing fine. So we have our multi-user Wakanda wackadoo list, but we're not done. Let's look at some more things. First of all, we're not signed in. I'm going to hit the Create button. And let's do this, red alert. Nobody's signed in, but we just saved a to-do list item. So now we're going to go back to our server-side code that you saw before, and I'm going to query the base to-do list. And it's nice. You can do server-side testing here, and it just shows me a visual representation of all the entities. And we can see here, red alert. That entity did get created. It doesn't have a user ID. It's not tied to anybody, but I still don't like that behavior. So Wakanda gives you a lot of tools to secure your application, and I'm going to show you how you can fix this. So let's go back to our directory, and you can see we added users, but Wakanda also supports groups. And you can do a lot of different things with groups, and today I'm going to show you one of those things. So let's create an employees group, and we're going to add all three of our presenters today into that group, and we're going to save that. And we need to reload this up to the server, and you can see you can control Wakanda server from the studio. And in fact, your Wakanda server could be on a completely different machine. So Wakanda gives you a very nice development environment. You could have people with Wakanda Studios and have the server at a different location. Now what we can do now that we've added that group is we'll go back to our to-do list, and you can see now you can add class permissions. So we will say that only employees can add to-do list items. So let's save that. Now, one more thing we have to do in the settings, since we've added our a group and using authentication and permissions, we have to change our authentication to custom. And that's all documented. Wakanda has beautiful documentation for all of these things. So let's start up our server again. There we go, Wakanda server is started. We will go back here and try to create another intruder. Let's do a green intruder alert. And save it. Now you can see the behavior is a little different. It didn't disappear. If we go back to the server, and you can see here, we were able to create our red alert entity. I'm going to run this again. Still the bottom one, red alert. The green alert did not get created we have secured our application on the server side, which is much better than trying to secure it on the client side, because there's always people smart enough to figure out how to get around your application. They, they'll go into the debugger and they will, go here for scripts, and they will go look and they'll figure it out. And in fact, our fearless leader, Laurent Ribardier, came here back in February, and right away he logged into my first application, and I thought it was all locked down, and he got in there and broke it. So now I'm learning to secure using all the nice Wakanda security features on the server. Okay, so we're not done yet. We have some more time. Let's look at a few more things. I think it would be nice if we could add a little more flexibility to our to-do list, where Michelle, as the manager, could see everybody's to-do list items and make sure that his guys are not doing something he doesn't want them to do. So I can show you how we can do that. So if we go back to our directory, we can add another group called Management. Did I spell that? Anybody know how to spell? Is that right?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. Michelle said it's fine. I'm going with it. Management. Okay. And of course, in the management group is our fearless leader. So we changed the directory. We need to stop the server. Now, we're going to show you one of the new security APIs that has just been added recently by the development team. Okay, everybody, while we're stopping Wakanda server, you can take a minute, stretch. Okay, we're ready to go back. Now, you remember on the to-do list, this was our public interface to our data. We had a restricting query that would only show the entities for the currently signed-in user. Well, what we're going to do now is that the engineering team in France has added a little more flexibility to this, and you can now add a restricting query function, which you can look at the context of the situation and return your entity collection based on many factors. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. So first thing we're going to do is basically this function, we want to return the entity collection for the to-do list when a query for all the entities comes in. So now we're back writing server-side code. And of course, it is JavaScript. So the first thing I'm doing here is just basically returning a null entity collection, and that will be the default behavior of this method. Okay, so now let's put our logic in. First of all, we need to get a hold of our session. So the current session method will do that for us. And what I want to do here is check if the current session is a member of the management group, then I want to return all the entities. We will fill that in later. Result is ds.todolist.all. Else, if it's not a member of the management group, let's just do what we did before and return only the entities for the currently signed in user. So right here, we're almost done here. User ID, and we will pass in to our query current user ID. So we have a little more to clean up here. We want to check if they're a member of the management group. So let's take a look. Let's save that. We need to save our model. So let me double check this. We get the current session. Whoop, this is not right. That's current session. So we look at the current session. If the current session belongs to the management group, return all the to-do list items, else just return for the current user. All right, so let's go try that out. Starting up Wakanda server again, going back to our application, and let's sign in as Billy the Kid. So, he'll complete this one, and Billy's going to call in sick and go golfing. Save that. So Billy thinks he's all good, but our fearless leader logs in, and look, Michelle can now see all of the to-do list items. He sees that Billy is going to call in sick and go golfing, and so right away he's going to post Billy's job up on dice.com and look for a beautiful young intern to take his place. Anyway, that is our Wakanda list for today. I hope you've enjoyed your tour of the Wakanda Studio, and I am finished, so we're ready for some questions.
All right, no, thank you, Dave, for that great demo, a great introduction to building a multi-user app with Wakanda. Actually, I'm looking forward to playing with it. Before we move on to the Q&A, like you suggest, I'd like to actually direct people to some places that where you can find some additional information about Wakanda. The first and foremost, of course, the website, wakanda.org. I also invite you to join our active forum at forum.wakanda.org, so you can easily find answers to your questions. Actually, several of our engineers are actually monitoring and answering questions, as well as other community members, so take advantage of it. We're also making extra effort to make sure that we have an as complete as possible and up-to-date as possible documentation, so make sure to check it. If you're using Facebook or Twitter, we're in there, so you can find us at Wakanda Soft, and show us some love by clicking on the like button on Facebook. News, actually, we also started to market our JavaScript Everywhere conference, and you're going to find more information on jseverywhere.org. And we have actually just started a call for papers. So if you're familiar with JavaScript or familiar with Wakanda and you'd like to submit a session, we'd love to have it and to see you at our event. This webinar is our second of Wakanda webinar series. If there are topics that you would like us to see or to see covered, or that you would like us to cover, or that you would like to participate in, I would suggest that you share them with us, either through the chat room today or by sending an email to us. So this is it for this presentation. We're going to look at the questions that are coming. Are you guys ready?
Sure.
And answer right away. All right. So the first question: how do we connect the Wakanda app to the Derby database?
4D?
No, Derby.
Drupal? Derby? Well, anyway, the engineering team in France is working on connections to other servers, and so that is underway. You will be seeing some things, I think, by the time the summit rolls around, if not sooner. But one thing you can do is there have been users already who have connected other client-side frameworks to the Wakanda data server, because the Wakanda data server has an open REST API, and of course it integrates nicely with Wakanda client, but it does not stop you from connecting to other client-side frameworks. And the Wakanda server can actually talk to other servers. So you could do a pass-through. It's very open, and there's a lot of solutions. And the engineering team is working on providing some of those now, but they are not available yet.
Yeah, and to add to what you just said, there are connections that we're aware of that have been made with, for instance, MySQL, but those that were made by the community, there might be others, so that's why I really recommend that you go on the forum and ask there and see what's going on. The community is pretty active, and there's a lot of things that are happening. We're not always aware what's being developed. That's great, actually, in one hand, because it's happening with others. On the other hand, so check the forum. It might be that somebody developed some connection with Derby.
There was another question came up from Jesse about in the to-do list application, when the manager logged in, could you show who the list belonged to? And Jesse, yeah, that'd be very easy. When we initialized the to-do list entities on the server in that knit function, we could have added in their name, the session, the current session, besides having the ID, also has the full name of the user. So we could easily add that in. I see another question from someone asking about a tree widget. And yes, there will be a tree widget in Wakanda, and the engineering team has that on their roadmap. So you should be seeing that sometime soon.
Yeah, one other question. Let me see here, it's going fast. What is it? One question was asking about the roadmap. What is the roadmap for the Wakanda server? At this time, what we have made public in terms of roadmap is available on the website. So if you go to the wakanda.org, you'll find a roadmap page. So make sure to check that. We're listing the features that are available in this, the last version that we actually put out there. And we're also listing the features that are upcoming, that are planned. Let's make sure that we say the right word, that are planned for the following version.
I see a question from Nick. Is there a built-in data browser query tool, or is this handled via server-side? Well, today in our webinar, I showed you how to do it from the studio on the server, but there is a browser tool, and actually you can get that from the studio. There's a button for that. It's called Data Browser, actually. So what a great name. And yeah, the tree widget, we answered that one. That is coming. Let's look for some more questions. What is the chance, the import? We have a question about importing. You can write, there's full support for JavaScript on the server side, and so there are examples of import routines on the Wakanda documentation. In the quick start documentation, they have an example of an import. Also, how to pass variables between pages. Well, in my application today, it was a one-page application. It was basically just like a client type of application. But you can write multi-page applications with Wakanda. There's a few examples of how to do that. I might show a little bit of that in a future webinar. I know there isn't one example of that you can see now is our great evangelist from France, Thibault, has written a version of the to-do list in version 1, and he has a multi-page application there instead of using the tab. So if you go to our Wakanda website, there's a link to GitHub examples, and if you look at the version 1 to-do list, that will show you a little bit of how to do that. Okay, any questions here? Let me look here. How can you synchronize a 4D server with the Wakanda framework? Well, that is coming. I have to tell you that there are people working on that, so just stay tuned, and hopefully we'll be seeing some more information about that. There's also the 4D engineering, the Wakanda engineering team is hard at work on providing that in the roadmap in the future. A lot of people are asking for that, but we have no date at this time. Are there FTP, somebody's asking, Bill, are there FTP commands access with Wakanda? Well, the Wakanda server is accessible via its REST API. You don't need to connect to it with the Wakanda client. In the first webinar, I showed that. If you go into the documentation and look at the REST API, that may answer your question. Let me see. What does the word Wakanda mean? It's a Sioux Indian word for inner magic. And it's not a very technical, but it's certainly interesting. I want to say hello to all the folks from Morocco this morning, or it must be evening there. Thank you guys for tuning in. And if you ever want me to come over there and give a live presentation, I'd be happy to fly there anytime.
I think all of us, actually.
Yeah. A question from Mike. Is the backup and restore of a Wakanda database as robust as the 4D backup and restore capabilities? The answer is yes, it will be just as robust. Will there be a studio version for Linux? That's a question from someone, and that is not on the roadmap. I've not seen that. So the server will run on Linux, the Wakanda server, but I do not know at this time whether there are plans for a studio on Linux.
Yeah, actually, if we see increased demand for it, we put it on the roadmap. We haven't seen a huge demand for it yet. So.
Okay, that looks like most of the questions. Are there any plans for source control integration? And yes, there is. In fact, the studio actually references that, but I don't know that it's complete yet. But yes, we will have that. So thank you, Sean, for that question.
All right. It looks like we do. Okay, we're. You want to start?
I think we're almost, let me see, is there a mobile app simulator in the studio? At this time, there is not. But if you guys, the great place to ask for things like this is on the Wakanda forum, because the engineers and management team is reading the forum every day. So put your requests. In fact, there's a section of the forum just for feature requests. So that would be a nice request to put out there.
All right, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We hope that was helpful. Make sure you let us know how we can improve the webinars, how and what the kind of topics you'd like to see covered. And we're looking forward to see you at our next webinar. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.